shipping, and interacting with models is that there's no good way to check if the models are actually working. In my opinion, everyone is still testing the waters and trying to see if we can actually put this out in the world. And in my opinion, a very good way to do that is to quickly try uh, a lot of things. And if you don't want to depend on like one giant monolith, like I don't know, uh, OpenAI, uh, uh, Google, and whatnot, you need to experiment with local models. Um, so after like saying bad things about big companies, oh, oops, okay. Can I change slides from here? Cool, I can. I am a Google developer, expert in machine learning. Uh, that's why you'll see the name. But yeah, I also used to do Kaggle once in a past life. Currently, I work at a Swiss startup called Lightly AI. We sell data labeling as a service, but backed by sort of smarter deep learning ways, particularly active learning and self-supervised learning. Before that, I deployed graph RAG LLMs before like the RAG word was a thing. Interestingly, we deployed these things on VR headsets, so extreme like CPU inference as well. And before that, for about like 1.5 years, I used to work at Weights and Biases. I was in the growth team. I made all sorts of like developer content. I'm based out of Manchester at the moment. But yeah, some notes before we start. Please engage during the talk. This was originally meant for like a longer, I don't know, 45, 60-minute tutorial. Since we only have 30 minutes, please ask questions in the middle pertaining to the topic, of course. Slides are available on my website in case you want them uh, beforehand. I'm lucky enough to have like a unique name. So if you just look me up, my website should pop up somewhere. And yeah, after the session, please feel free to ask like off-topic questions as well. So this is funny, actually, but traditional LLMs involved pre-training and fine-tuning. I got into ML before sort of transformers were a thing. So I remember the days when everyone was training their own uh, models. This is, of course, ancient knowledge these days. The RAG workflow is giant corporates make models and release them nowadays, trained on both sort of web corpora and also synthetic data. Then all of us try to use our custom knowledge bases and make something actually tangible for users. Also, like before I start, let's think of like a good way to eliminate. How many of you consider yourself as like technical AI and engineers? I'll use less jargon that way. Okay, so from where I see, it's like a 40% technical audience. So I'll try to use like less jargons. But I hope everyone can agree with the fact that all of us are like trying to build something with LLMs. Trying be the key word here. If some of you think that you have successfully deployed LLMs in your own use cases, please have a chat with me afterwards. But yeah, most of these use cases revolve around either processing unstructured data formats. If you look at this summer's YC portfolio, almost half of the companies are trying to make sense of PDFs, I know, um, YouTube videos, law books, and whatnot. The other half are trying to build sort of customer support QA bots. And then, of course, there are like bigger companies trying to build conversational uh, agents. You have startups like Anthropic, Claude, and whatnot. There's like a little star there on workflow automation. I have lately seen some people trying to actually ship AI agents out in the real world to automate things. If you are one of those, please let's talk. But over the years, we have seen a sort of evolution from one-shot prompting. That's, I know, the typical chat GPT use case, to few short examples. So that's when within the prompt itself, you're saying, I don't know, sample input one, sample output two, sample uh, input two, and like here is what my actual prompt is, and then lately, so vector augmented inference, so vector databases, multimodal embeddings and whatnot. Um, the last AI engineer talk by Llama Index mentioned the word agentic workflows. So that's going beyond summarization and sort of focusing more on performing actual real life tasks. This is where I believe the key sort of power behind LLM lies, but do people actually use it? Who knows? Cool. So a quick RAG primer, new mass, same task. Uh, did someone get that reference? No nerds here? Okay. I heard a laugh. Okay. So, okay, cool. So, um, assuming you have um, your own custom knowledge bases in some format, the key four steps are, so you index um, your data sets to create embeddings. You store them so you don't need to index them again. You query them. That's the main LLM bit. And the actual key use case in deploying these things is evaluation. Uh, that's where like most of the sort of quote unquote real work in RAG is happening these days. But again, parsing, retrieval, querying, these are old sort of well-studied concepts in NLP. I come from a family of academics. My parents studied these things in the bachelor's in the 70s as well. So these are like very, very well-known things. The key novelty behind this whole RAG thing is the use of LLMs to actually do querying. Before this, you had to handcraft your own features, your own heuristics, but with LLMs, we can alleviate that need and hopefully just like run inference on whatever you want. But like this comes with the drawback of having to like really evaluate your models, and this is like something we'll uh, discuss as well. So again, three things that I had mentioned in different KLS as well. So rapid prototyping and local models. Like let's dive into each of these three things in uh, detail as well. So just don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just like leverage open source. I still come across some people who have spent like most of their life in sort of quote unquote corporate world, and they don't trust open source yet. The future of AI is definitely open source. So just please try and leverage as many open source libraries as you can. Some of my favorite ones for ingestion, particularly, is Llama Index and unstructured IO for indexing. You can use a bunch of them. LLM ops question mark, have we actually accepted that word or not? I am particularly biased to use Weights and Biases own Weave offering as a ex employee, but if you know of, yep, sure. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I have no clue. Uh, LLM ops, from what I can tell, is a subset of ML ops focusing on how to use LLMs. So it's just the same thing as ML ops tries to do, but focused on LLMs. So I know for ML ops particularly, let's see, there's experiment tracking. In LLMs, you're not when you use LLMs, you're not usually training your own models. You're just using them for inference. So the same sort of parallel for training is LLM tracing. So that is given a query, what output do you get, right? Or there could be data drift monitoring. So how does your actual text corpora change over time, and do you need to use different sort of chunking um, strategies? I've I've also seen stuff like LLM routers come up. So which sort of backend LLM model to use, if that helps. Yep.
The artifacts are usually different. The artifacts are usually prompts in the case of LLMs and models in the case of ML ops. I mean, the same tools are used. Like you could use ML flow for tracking LLM ops stuff as well. So you could use the same tools for both. Um,
Definitely. I think I saw one more hand come up. Yeah.
I think in the pre-LLM era, a lot of the times in an operational environment, you can keep all the ML stuff away. You do the work in advance and pre-compute things. With LLMs, it's so tempting to do something at runtime. Then you've got this huge context, increasingly big context to pass in, which gives operational engineers a lot of headaches.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. I think you have one more question.
Yeah, I think he answered it. So it's like ML ops is like more predictive way of doing what we done earlier. Like LLM ops most used in a very advanced level of setup I seen. It's still in early stage. Like you use for fine tune and prompting, then you put it in a like a DevOps cycle, like ML ops cycle, and you inject it to LLM. So that's a cycle we try to how do we. So there is a difference between how do we do DevOps if most of them know. The similar way we use ML ops, and similar way the endpoint of each thing is different. In LLM ops, it's most LLM. ML ops is like most like we are creating a machine learning model where the artifacts will inject into. Then DevOps, we have this Kubernetes and containers where we get the artifacts. It's a kind of, we have to correlate the things, so it's much more easier. So I just want to add the note for you, yeah.
Thank you. And also thank you for asking the question as well. I'm sorry if I missed like a question earlier. I'll try to look more. Do you have a question, sir? Do you have a question? Okay, no, sorry. But yeah, cool. So if you quickly wanna iterate building RAG applications, something which I noticed when I was building them was caching becomes very important. I put cache in quotes here because it's not in like the traditional computer science sense. By caching, I mean like just like storing as many artifacts as you can. In most cases, after you have generated sort of your index or your vector database, you won't need to generate them again. So you don't need to like every time just create the index again. Just create one, write it to memory, store it in cloud, uh, uh, whatever, but like cache all of your sort of quote unquote artifacts that you have. Uh, as rightly mentioned, so uh, one particular inference cycle involves a bunch of things, and it's a very good thing to what a good thing to do is just try to track like what each step takes. If people are not familiar with this is Weights and Biases. We've not sponsored, but yeah. So one query took 12 seconds, in which like 2 seconds was just like retrieving something from the database, and the next 7 seconds was just sending it up to Anthropic server and like getting a request back. So if you sort of like profile every step this way, you can know like which part of your pipeline is actually slow, and then you can sort of iterate better on top of it. The retrieving case in most cases can be solved by again using some sort of fancy caching um, technique. So again, just saying it again, profile your workflow, try to figure out like in one entire call what the slow aspects are, because as I told you, 12 seconds just not a acceptable amount for any sort of app. Like you won't wait 12 seconds to hear back from, I know, uh, uh, ChatGPT or Claude. Know your data and which vector database to use for it. I used to work at a startup where we had to work with medical knowledge graphs which had text at their nodes. So just using like a simple list-based vector index was not good, and like after 3 months we had to like get rid of uh, uh, everything and build something again. So try to figure out what your data is and what you need from it. In most cases, like a simple sort of list view should work. I know if you're working with PDFs, websites, mostly uh, lists are enough. But if you have any sort of other geometry or structure to it, use the appropriate database. The best reference that I know of is Llama Indexes documentation or Vector DB. They lay out like which database type to use for which source. And again, make sure your data ingestion pipeline is flexible. Over the past year alone, I've seen people go from um, PDF based workflows to now Llama parse is a thing to now like uh, uh, data privacy is a thing again. After 3 months, you might want to shift from like a list based view to a I know uh, a map based view. So like just make sure the data pipeline that you are making is flexible enough for you to iterate on later. Um, Prototyping bit, in my humble opinion, if you quickly want to build something and showcase it to your I know manager, the best way to do it is use Llama index for ingestion. Use some sort of API based inference either. Um, I think Anthropic has one at this point, and like in case you want to build like a web UI for it, you can use like Streamlit or Gradio. Um, Start very small and then tune for your needs. It's very easy to sort of uh, over engineer everything and try to stay and try to have like a agentic workflow in the first place. But even if you like build a simple pipeline and then check the times again, for most cases it might be more than like 10 seconds per inference call. ChatGPT is fast because it's backed by like huge GPU compute. Even at inference time, you probably won't have that. So just start small and then try to improve on top of it. From what I have experimented with, just using raw data works very fine. By raw, I mean just like no chunking, no sentence uh, passing, just ingest the whole PDF and it should work fine. I'll showcase sort of um, a demo as well, which just shows a like a raw PDF works well. And depending on your use case, again, you might have to look into splitting and chunking, but for most use cases, it will work fine. Um, I saw this on Twitter somewhere. What you're building is in most cases unique, but also mostly similar. So this is just like the 80-20 rule. 80% of all pipelines will be the same, but the key difference will be in those 20%. So just use a template uh, from I don't know maybe um, Llama index or Axotol, right? And then just like try to fine tune it to your own needs. You will most likely build something different. Therefore, sharing ideas is important. I've seen a lot of people create hype about what they're building, but not actually share ideas. You can share ideas without revealing your IP. Just like helps everyone as well. Again, the no free lunch theorem still exists, so there will be like there is no single learning algorithm which works for everything. You will have to fine tune and change things. Lastly, I want to touch on evaluation. So you need to know what your metric is. Most industrial metrics don't correlate with sort of real world uh, data. I'm not sure if you caught the whole BM25 drama or not, but all of your metrics will be different. You can't just simply use like I know an off the shelf metric. You will need to create a metric of your own which is valuable to your own company, to your own KPIs. Learn to make one and then monitor that over the data drift. Lastly, local models. I quickly want to touch on this. When I initially submitted the talk, I had very strong sort of opinions about only using local models, but I know I work on a 2020 M1 MacBook Pro, 8 GB RAM. I can't do much. So my thoughts have changed over the past few weeks, but like the key motivations would be all the prompts live on your own servers. If you're using local models, ChatGPT by now default uses your given input for training as well. So if that is a concern, you might want to use local models. The infrastructure lies in your hands. You can spin up as many GPUs as you want. If you want to run on pure CPUs, you can do as many cores as you want. Also, the pricing is then in your own hands. This is again coming back to the monolith point. OpenAI might decide to uh, change pricing whenever they want. They might charge differently for images and text. So if you choose to go local, the pricing remains in your hands. How to do it? We have our friends at Hugging Face with the world's largest model hub out there. Local doesn't always mean bad. There's great work being done by Unsloth in creating sort of extremely nice, even like 4-bit quantized models which run like 60% faster and take up like 70% less um, memory. So local doesn't always mean bad. Yeah, let's go over like some naive RAG examples. When I say naive, these are like extremely simple textbook examples. And if we have time, I would like to showcase like a real demo as well. But yeah, firstly, like I like dinosaurs a lot. So an idea that I had was, what if I have any questions about the original Jurassic Park movie, right? So someone was nice enough to post the actual script online. So you can use one of the readers from Llama Index to just read the whole script. This is just raw information in type font, right? And this will hopefully help with what I said earlier, that in most cases raw data should work fine. In case the font is not readable, again, slides are there on my um, um, website. But yeah, so 3 lines of code to like actually ingest everything. Then you can choose like across a bunch of vector databases. Based on my experiments, just like the default one offered by Llama Index is nice. A side note on what I said on caching. So once you create your index, this is a time taking process. By the way, you can just like write it to disk, save it on cloud, and next time when you want to use it, you can simply either download it or load it from mm, memory again. And then, yeah, sure. 5 more minutes. Okay, cool. So um, this is like a local model example, but again, you can use any model from Hugging Face within a Llama index pipeline. You can pass in as many options, as many configurations as you want. You can provide templates as well. Uh, I believe the example that I'm showing you right now is Llama 2. And the question that I asked is, are velociraptors pack hunters? If you have seen the movie, you know the answer is yes. And this is the same slide as before. It says, yes, velociraptors are pack hunters. So it was able to read, I don't know, like a 500-page movie script and like extract that information. Again, it took 12 seconds. So there's a lot to improve here. Mostly it's slow because of the inference call. Uh, it's hidden, but it took like 7 seconds to actually run the query. And this is why I have mixed feelings about local models. Uh, all the papers will show that, I know we have such fast inference rates, but that's on like 8H1 hundreds. I don't have that. I have like a 8 GB M1 MacBook. But yeah. I also like want to be Weave. So another idea that I had was to create a documentation bot of my own. So they have their own website with the documentation on it. So instead of scraping the actual website, what I thought I would do is I'd clone the repository itself, um, point a reader to their docs directory and just read all the markdown files. So yeah, again, like similar, like 3-4 lines of code. In For this, I used Anthropic, and then I asked like what Python version does Weave require, and boom, it's 3.9. This information is actually not on their site. You can go on Weave documentation and search it. So I'm assuming it read it from like somewhere within the docs. I also like to try to keep up with AI. This is something I shipped an hour ago. I'm calling it the daily paper CLI. So if you guys know AK from Hugging Face, he recommends sort of like 10, 11 papers every day. So this is like a CLI bot that I built. So you can run the CLI. It'll tell you like the 8, 9 uh, uh, papers that Hugging Face recommends you read, and then if you want the summary of a particular paper, you can tell it which ID you want, and then it'll use Anthropic by default um, to sort of, so it downloads the whole paper, ingests it, sends it to Anthropic to generate a summary, and then get the query back. And then if you have any questions about the paper as well, you can just press yes, and that lands you in a chatbot environment within the CLI as well. And again, I shipped this an hour ago. I built this in 3 hours, so it is still quite hacky. You can install it from PyPI if you want. Just pip install daily hyphen papers or underscore. It's one of those. But yeah, I will release like a Hugging Face space for it as well. So again, if you daily want to read stuff, you can do that. I believe we are out of time. So if you have any questions, please. Thank you. For which it's different for all three, but by default I just stick to llama indexes vector. But in case so my friends at Weights and uh, 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 biases, they have their own documentation bot called WantBot, and they use ChromaDB. I've not seen a lot of people use it, but they get like great performance from it. So yeah, not my recommendation, but Weights and biases.
What could be the use case for this? Like, why someone will be using this? What is a
Which one?
typical workable use case? What you're showing,
Yeah.
like local llama or
Mhm.
local GPT or whatever you. So, what could be the use case that why someone should use that? You think?
The best thing that I can think of is that it's a starting point to then develop agentic workflows. I have always felt that RAG is a hacky solution. It's just like one of the ways that we have figured out how to use our own data in conjunction with LLMs. But if you're talking about like a pure RAG based workflow, so no agents, just RAG, in my opinion, it'll just be limited to summarization. I think that's the only task that we can solve quite well using Pusley lines.
Hi. Is it possible to get your presentation to test your code?
Yeah, of course. So the slides are on my website. If you want each code in particular, it's not linked in the slides. However, Daily Papers is on our own repository. The 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 Jurassic Park use case is available on Weights and Biases as a blog post, and the Weave example is on my own notebooks repository. So it's there if you want it. If you want each particular code, just like DM me or meet me after the talk. I'll let you know which one it is.
Also, we will be sharing talkers presentations on the Slack channel after.
He had a question as
well. Thanks. Have you looked at all at using SQL databases in a RAG context where the LLM is writing the SQL?
Yep.
Teaching the schema and so on.
Wait, where the LLM is writing the SQL?
Yeah, or plugging stuff into SQL templates.
Okay. I have not worked with those. but I have read about them. I was going to intern at a company which just did that. Um, my own personal thoughts, it's still hacky. I don't see how a client would ever want to do that. That is too risky. But yeah, sure, it could be done. Not a satisfying answer, but sorry. Yeah, that's all I have.
Last question.
To sort of answer his question, I've used like agents and LLMs with SQL Rack, and like he said, it is a little hacky, but a solution to that is just writing your own SQL queries as tools in either LangChain or LangGraph, for example. So basically, you'll provide it the SQL code that you're running. What will change is just the query values. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I specifically used it for a use case where I was adding, for example, bookings to an SQL table. I'm not talking about semantic search here. Yeah. Yeah.
The questions. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Again, I came up with it last weekend, and the only reason I published the package was I was pretty sure if I didn't publish it, someone would claim the package name on PyPI. So I just published it there and then. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. It was an interesting talk, and I enjoyed it. We have a few minutes break until the next speaker is setting up, so you can have some refreshments if there is any left, and go to the bathroom. Hello. Please start coming back. Please start coming back.
First of all, the toilets, they look from the outside, right? So if you close the door, you can't go out. You should be able to, yeah. So I tried it. Once it closes, you can't open it. There should be a button there. I assume there's a button. Otherwise, we'll stand there. Because last time we left the box in there and it kept beeping. Oh, okay.
Do you want to use this, or do you want to use the thing? This is fine. Yeah. Okay. Is it on? Yes, it's already turned on. You just talk close to it.
I will. Is this audible?
Yeah.
Loud enough?
That's
Throw beer on myself. I've done it.
Just say something before you start. Just let me know when you're going.
You mean to?
Yeah, yeah. Just need to let everyone know of stickers they can take. Because we left some stickers in the chairs and no one.
I'll hand it over to you.
So our next speaker is Payal Jain from Citibank. Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. If we can have your attention.
Hi, everyone. Just one quick notice. We left some stickers in the chairs. Feel free to take them home if you want to. You can actually take them home.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope I'm audible. Great. It's great to be here talking about our generative AI journey to make it real for our enterprise and at scale. So I'm Payal. I look after engineering and platforms for Citibank. My remit is simple: to modernize the bank inside out. And that takes a lot of doing. My team is responsible for building the core platforms, some of the core platforms, I should say, that the bank runs on, including the generative AI ecosystem. Before joining Citi, I spent a good part of my career at Google and Salesforce building planet-scale products. And it's been a very interesting journey. So to give you a bit of a view into the scale of Citi, Citi operates in around 100 countries and has about 35,000 engineers. How that is relevant to our conversation here today is that everything that we engineer, everything that we develop, every service, every technology that we use has to be very aware of country-specific policies, regulations, and that makes it incredibly interesting to build something at scale. We've been interested and very keen on generative AI from the get-go, from GPT-2 days, and extremely keen actually when ChatGPT was launched. And ever since then, there's been no looking back. In fact, one thing that we knew from the get-go, and that is that if we had to make GenAI happen, if we had to embrace it in the company, a bank at scale, we had to build very robust foundations. And in fact, that's what we've been very hard at work doing, making it real, building these foundations. Along the way, there have been so many lessons that we've learned. That is what I want to distill down for you this evening. So before jumping into that, what I want to do is very quickly, if I can get to the next slide, which for some reason is not tabbing. Give me a moment, please. I know, Saurav, you got that done successfully. Okay. Great, thank you. So I want to give you a bit of a context and a view of what the ecosystem looks like currently. This is evolving at a very rapid pace. It changes every week. 3 months down, it's not going to look the same, but this is where it stands today. At the heart of it is the AI gateway. And why is that so important? Because that is the layer that gives us the security, the scale, the auditability, the telemetry, metering that we need. So it really holds everything together. And that is the thing that fronts all the conversations, all the communication, all the requests that we make to the models that we have at the moment in the repertoire. And on the top of the AI gateway, we've been able to stand up some very value-added functionality, some layers that we've developed, particularly all the enterprise integrations that we've built on the top of the gateway. Also, the fact that we now have a rack store that's come together, again, very much tied to the central ecosystem, the AI control plane. Our evals framework that you referenced, extremely important. So that started to come together and mature, again, very much linked to the AI gateway and several other value-added functionalities. All the applications, the business applications that we're enabling, they talk to the gateway and are able to then communicate with the models that we have enabled at this point in time. Lastly, what you don't see here on this slide is this concept of AI blueprints that we have rolled out, which means that if there are any of these countries, any part of business that needs to build an application, we are able to codify the best practices that they should get started with. So these are codified blueprints as part of the central infrastructure, central packaging, more accurately, is what we have, and certain business tools as well. So generic utilities that business units across the globe, across these countries can use to interact with generative AI. So that's where we stand currently. Now, starting to get into the first lesson that comes to my mind, as you'd imagine, I'm from a bank. So this is very, very important. Controls and automation. And this is something we had realized nice and early, that to be able to make this happen, we had to automate this and we had to be able to apply controls along the way. It's very regulated. So we currently apply controls to everything that we do at various points in the journey. When you think about the journey from the lens of generative AI, it's got 3 key points: applications, the gateway, models, and the model providers, the cloud provider. So that's exactly what we do, apply controls along that continuum. For applications, as an example, something that we do is, let's say we've got an application that summarizes documents, PDFs, docx files, PPTX files, etc. We ensure that we check for sensitivity labels to see if there is any restricted data in the document. Does it have sensitive PII data and such? And we are able to then determine which country it's originating from, where does the data reside. And based on that, we are able to really route the workflow to an appropriate model. So that's an example of a control applied as left as possible at the application level. Thinking about the gateway, there's a series of controls that we apply. And I must mention, which I did not on the previous slide, the gateway is not a product that is off the shelf. We have developed it from scratch, and I feel very proud that we've engineered it in-house. It's a set of Golang services, very lightweight, extremely performant, very scalable, which are packaged up, run in Kubernetes, and we happen to have clusters, as you'd imagine, across data centers, hosted on-prem to keep us more secure. So that's where the control plane, the gateway, runs. And what that makes possible is this concept of pluggability. So coming back to controls, we apply a series of controls and checks when a request is traversing via the gateway all the way to the model. And some examples of that would be, as you'd imagine, is the prompt safe? Are we leaking any PII? Are we leaking any city-specific entities? And that could be employee IDs, keys, artifactory keys, things like that. You're also able to assess requests in terms of inspect requests, in fact, in terms of where did the request originate from? What is the IP address? Which users are making these callouts? Are these too many callouts? Metering it, rate limiting it, and also making sure that the right thing is happening via the gateway. And also archive these requests. And I keep saying requests, but it's requests and responses as well for forensics and for auditability. So those are some examples of the controls that we apply. Thinking about the model themselves, we happen to use a variety of models from across providers. So Google's one, Anthropic, almost getting enabled, OpenAI models via Azure, and a set of open source models as well, so open source, open weights models. And what we ensure contractually with some of these larger providers is to make sure that, one, there's no logging that happens in the cloud environment that the model is hosted on. That's one. And second, that the models don't learn from our data. So that's something that's incredibly important to us, and that's generally part of the contract when it comes to larger providers. And of course, for open source models, they happen to run very much on Kubernetes within our ecosystem. So the level of comfort we have with those is a lot higher. Another thing that I'd like to mention is that certain functionalities are extremely attractive. An example would be caching, context caching in particular, that Google has enabled. We would love to use it, but we take a very cautious approach to using some of these functionalities, because invariably what caching would mean is data residency in the cloud or wherever the provider provides their services. And that's not something that we can take lightly, which means we threat model, we make sure that the service or the feature is safe to use, and only then do we have it enabled within our ecosystem. Which also means that at times we end up building what is available out of the box, but that keeps us safe. So those are some of the controls that come to mind that have been very handy for us along the way. And in doing so, what's happened is that we are able to go faster because we feel more comfortable in being able to use more and more Gen AI in our almost BAU processes. We're going to get there sometime soon. Sure. That's a good question. So at the moment, the guardrail service that I'm referring to is something that we've developed in-house. We do use a couple of open source models to make that happen for prompt injection, PII detection, and entity detection, so to speak. We are actively looking at some vendor products such as Lakera, Protect AI, and others as well. But that's another story. At the moment, it's our homegrown tool. Machine learning classifiers, because it's an interesting problem. If it's LLMs validating the output, it could either mean latency if these LLMs happen to be on-prem, or it could mean leaking some data. So that doesn't really help us very much.
Do you actively monitor the Twitter or whatever for prompt injection attacks and hot swap between your providers depending on what's going on that week?
No, not really. No.
It's kind of a hobby for a lot of people, is to hack, to get the models to misbehave. For the
Mm.
most part, it's harmless, but for your kind of setting,
Yeah, I think
probably
we're
not.
very shielded from that so far.
Okay, so I was interested to know, how would you protect yourself from the data that the model was already trained on? You have a contract with the cloud provider.
Yeah.
They don't train on your data.
Yeah.
But they might have trained on somebody else's data that might be influencing your data,
Yes.
the results that you're getting.
Yeah, I think so. Just to repeat the question was, how do you protect yourself from the data that the model is already trained on? Because the results you see would be colored based on the training the model has had. Yeah, it's a problem that one has to protect oneself against. So a lot of it perhaps goes back to use cases and the capacity in which you're consuming the output, I'd say. A lot of our use cases, as you'd imagine, are a lot around documentation, report generation, reviewing documents. That's one set of use cases, simplistic ones, but that's a very common pattern. And the other are around code generation, code reviews, etc. You'll see that, and I'll cover that, but the capacity in which we use models, how much automation do we want to bring into the mix strategically and currently, we've been very conscious about that, which means that we do very firmly believe that where the reasoning abilities stand, we need to be able to have these models grounded in some reality, and which is human evals, something deterministic. So that really gives us that guardrail, which is a human review, which is generally more critical in nature. That's one way of looking at it. RAG use cases, again, simpler, because you have a lot of grounding that you can provide as input and context. So that is what we fall back on, and that's really stood us in good stead so far. Mm-hmm. We audit, yeah, we audit the requests and responses, yes. Well, when I said audit, I didn't so much mean model responses in terms of correctness. That is a different part of the journey. Not when I say audit, I mean really making sure that what's going to the models, what's coming back is safe. We're not leaking information. We're not talking about things that we shouldn't be talking about. The responses could be off track, but then evals is what keeps us to point on that front. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting questions. Again, gets into a proprietary space, but that is more contractual with the providers. Yeah. Any other questions?
More like the LLM ops, like you have that in place. It was amazing actually what you've achieved in house. So you have some sort of LLM ops in place.
We have LLM ops in place, but I think we're maturing it as we go along. What you mean with LLM ops for me is generally observability and the ability to see exactly what's happening. Right. That's been a motivation, Gen AI or non-Gen AI for us. Know what's happening, have that data visible, have it visible in a self-service manner. So that's what we are almost doing the same thing for Gen AI and making it visible.
And also deployable, right?
Not very deployable, yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very repeatable, yes.
Yeah. And the other thing, maybe if you cover or you can answer it in the end, is like, why do it? Like, what's the ROI?
Oh, yes, sure. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Okay, so I think we segue into this subject here, taking a staggered approach. And I think perhaps this is going to resonate with most of us here. Being able to be iterative and try things out is extremely handy. But what I want to cover when it comes to this is a few things. So it's an enterprise. It's a very large organization. By taking a staggered approach, I mean a few things. So as we started, and this may have been 9 to 12 months in the past, or slightly longer, we knew that to make this successful, we needed a level of awareness across the organization, which led us to actually forming a leadership council across Citi, putting together a task force, making sure there's representation from across the bank. And that means across countries, across departments, etc. Making that happen because that, one, built awareness. Second, we had a whole set of use cases that people wanted to take to production. And when I say a whole set, I mean hundreds of them registered, saying these are good candidates. But we had to sift through the best ones. And by that, I mean thematic use cases that would bring us the most return on investment, at least notionally. And that's how we went about it. And that meant a dozen use cases that we wanted to focus on, put our energies into, prototype more seriously, and then be on a path to production with those use cases. Along the way, maturing the ecosystem, maturing the architectural building blocks that I showed you, and also maturing processes, our governance function, our compliance function, and letting teams in very key departments such as risk to catch up to thinking about new ways of handling risks and risk mitigation strategies. So that is what we could do because we took an approach like this. That's one. Second, we decided not to commit to a single model provider very early in the game, which means have access to more models, put in the effort, and have multiple model providers in the mix and connectivity established and everything that's needed to bring to life a new platform. So we did that. And that's been a good decision because now we are able to use models for their strengths, understand what's better, what's not, what's a good fit, what's not. And that's given us a lot of, real learning and the opportunity for use case teams to select from a repertoire of models that we are happy to back. Generally, the selection factors, as you'd imagine, would be 3 to 4, such as what's the latency, what is the quality of output that we are seeing, how much time is it taking, how much context window, what is the context window size does the model support, and perhaps most importantly for us, what data classification and residency. So what does the use case need? Can it actually have data traveling all the way to cloud, even if we are not storing it, if we're not caching it? Should we use an on-prem model, things like that. But we're able to make those selections because we have a huge set of models that we can choose from. So that's been handy. All right, moving on. Talking about this, I think we already got into the subject, human in the loop, extremely important. And I say human in the loop, but what I really mean is the ability to have something deterministic validate the output of the model. So that's what we are doing at the moment. Principally, we do not want end-to-end automation. That's a conscious decision. We're gonna happily almost revisit this decision in the future when we see a step change in the model's reasoning abilities, but we don't see that yet. And we find that there's more value in being able to use models in these assistive capacity as opposed to as replacements to end-to-end workflow. So that's what we are doing at this point in time. The second thing that we are very hard at work doing is readying Citi APIs, Citi documentation, Citi services, everything deterministic for GenAI. So we're making it more ready for GenAI. And by that, what I mean is that our document interfaces, our API interfaces, metadata, documentation of these APIs, the way we think about schemas is becoming more GenAI friendly so that if we had to build an end-to-end process with GenAI in the mix, we could have these almost building blocks where GenAI would play a role, the output would be validated by another deterministic service, handed over to a human, et cetera, et cetera. Our documentation parsing logic now considers GenAI as an active actor. By that, what I mean is we've restructured a lot of our documentation so that it's friendlier for RAG, it's friendlier for GenAI, and we're getting better outcomes. So that's that. So it's been a step change in the way we think. And in the longer term, I think when we have GenAI models that become more capable, it's going to really help us expedite our workflow. So that's how we're looking at it. Thirdly, and to your point, Saurav, we're trying to have a mature and tailored approach for evals because there's so much material, there's so much benchmarking, so many libraries in the market, but this is something that one has to tailor for one's own needs. And it's not easy because there's no standard formula. In fact, it's so different when you think about code evals versus doc evals versus very use case specific evals. So we are trying to standardize that as much as possible. That's one. But more importantly, we're trying to change the mindset where we start to get our engineers and all of Citi to. Okay. Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it. Yes. We use several. We are experimenting when it comes to libraries, you know. So I wouldn't name any, but what we've done is we've written our CLI and our framework from scratch. And I think that works better for two reasons. One, because we understand it inside out. Second, it's simpler and it's more scalable. And it's fully customizable to our needs. So that's what we are using. We can use weights and biases, MLOps, anything open source to be able to present the findings of our eval runs, but the run itself and how we run it and what we look for is very custom to us. So it's not going to be things like, not only going to be things like correctness, bias, toxicity, and the 7 to 8 dimensions that if you look at most of the libraries you'd find, it would be more tailored to our own needs. It's a good question. In fact, that's what I was going to get to next. So with evals, the motivation and the dream is that evals, it needs to be reduced to or looked at as testing. The way our teams don't release anything without good unit testing, integration testing, performance testing, etc. I really want my teams across the company to look at evals that way. If you're changing the version of a prompt, if you're making a release, which could be a fortnightly release, if there's a model version change, minor or major, I mean, just a model version change, we have to be able to rerun our eval suite. And the best way to do it is not with a UI. It has to be in the CI/CD pipeline. So that's what we're doing. We need the almost the manifest metadata to be checked in a centralized way to access it, and then it just runs. We use Tecton for as a part of our CI/CD framework. So just run it as one of the steps. It must happen, and then the results need to get pushed up to a central place. That's not fully come together, but that is pieces of that are coming together. Yes. Yes, so it's very simple. It used to be a bit more complex, but we really simplified it. And that is be able to articulate your use case. One is it needs to be clear. If something is going to add value, it needs to be expressed clearly in the least. So there is a definition of why do you want to do this? What value will it bring to the company, to your team, and how many users, developers, end users will it impact? So what is the impact and really what is the reach? That is what we look at. People obviously put in numbers as to how many X millions dollars, whatever it's going to save us, but those are notional numbers as you'd imagine. So it's more around being able to articulate value and it feeling right. If one needs to explain it too much, you know that something's missing somewhere. Fair. Yes. Yeah. That's a very good point because it gets conflated very often. We have our we have our tech strategy, which now includes GenAI strategy. I wouldn't say that we fully understand it, but we are really getting there because we're very actively thinking about it. And some of those things, when should you use it, when should you not, when do you apply it versus not, is a part of that. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Just. Did I hear? Yeah, go for it. That's all right. I'm happy to have this conversation here.
Trying to join my thoughts up. Okay. To what extent do you think that the work you've done organizationally in terms of the use cases and the architecture sets you up for multimodal uses of the technology, sort of streaming audio, both within the company and the ecosystem around? So it's used for fraud and manipulation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what you've described is very, very sensible, the most prudent, sensible uses of the technology.
Yeah.
But this kind of wave of audio stuff is coming, and some of it's not going to be you building things. It's going to be you surviving the rise of audio fakes.
We're starting to experiment because that's going to be the next wave of interesting use cases that we're already starting to see within the company. We're not fully ready. I wonder if I'm sharing too much, but we're not fully ready from an infrastructure perspective. There's a lot of infrastructure, but I need to make sure that it's absolutely secure for it. Because when you're talking about audio files and videos, it's a lot of data movement. Being able to protect that data becomes very difficult because the capability, when I was talking about guardrails are great, but they don't fully apply to video. They don't apply to multimodal content the way they do to text content. So that is something we need to crack. Once we crack that, we've got all the models, the best ones that perhaps will support us in that journey, but that is the piece that we're trying to crack at the moment. Good. Shall I move ahead? I think we've covered everything that I want to talk about in this. Thank you. So this is the last one and a very, very broad brush one, building intuition. This has been, as you'd imagine, we've done a lot, we've built a lot, which means we've had the opportunity to understand a bit more about GenAI and the gaps and where we want to invest. We need to invest in all of those things. But the one that I want to focus on is build versus buy. We've known that as we mature our ecosystem at Citi, it's going to be build and buy. We would want to build the core components of our ecosystem, and we'll want to supplement that with a lot of these wonderful vendor products really that are coming together. It's incredible to see so many good ideas, so many new companies burgeoning across the globe, making it happen. So we've known that we would want to definitely have some of these in the mix. But it's not been a very straightforward journey, to be honest, to make those selections happen. And the reason for that is that there are lots of good products, but when we look under the hood, whilst they are good, great ideas, they perhaps may lack reality. And a lot of these products, as we've seen them, they seem to be in their infancy. First incarnations of great ideas, which means they're not ready for scale. They may not be ready for the kind of security we need, the latency that we expect, the end-to-end automation that we expect for these products to come with IAC, and good documentation, many, many fronts. So that's been quite an incredible journey. And that's in fact led us deeper into building more, which in my mind has been an absolute blessing in disguise. One, because it's fun, we're really enjoying it, but more importantly, because we are able to now form a better understanding of what we need to invest in, where the gaps lie, and what should 2025 look like in terms of how we think about our ecosystem, how we develop it and enrich it. So that's been wonderful. And it's really expedited our learning as well. I think there was an offer to be able to talk about hiring. So yes, we are hiring. There's a lot of focus on GenAI. I'm hiring across the globe, really. So US, London, India, several other locations. So if I could post that somewhere or link to some openings, I would love to be able to do that. That's the end of it. These are the distilled down lessons. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
What do you think about LLM reasoning? Have you seen any progress in the past 24 months?
24 months. Yeah, 24 months for certain. In fact, even in the last 6 months, well, reasoning is a good term. Reasoning and almost credibility to an extent is what we've seen. So certain features have made it a bit more deterministic for us. For example, this entire concept of being able to use functions, function calling, JSON mode, practically that makes it feel a bit better, a bit more deterministic, and hence better to be able to bake into any kind of workflow. So that's felt like a step change, but going back to your question, reasoning-wise, yes, 24 months, I'd say definitely. I personally happen to like 3.5 Sonnet quite a bit, and all the Anthropic models, they are absolutely great. 4.0 has been very interesting as well, and definitely a step change from Turbo. So that's how we see it, and I see it at least. Anthropic is just about getting enabled in the bank. So yes.
And would you attribute that performance jump or that progress to more data, bigger scale, or is it using the LLM models plus some more deterministic software, check input outputs, or is it that the base models themselves are
I
just
think it's the
getting
base
better?
models themselves, and I'll tell you why I say that practically. There are several CLIs that I've written and several services that I've written. And the way I felt about how much it could do 6 months ago, now switching the model, let's say to 3.5 Sonnet, you totally get better outcomes. I've written some agents as well that were not able to complete a multi-step, multi-agent journey very nicely. I shouldn't be naming models, which ones didn't do it, but there were some that did not, even with very large context windows. But now I think they can, not the same ones, but for example, 3.5 Sonnet does a good job of being able to do something not extremely complex, but a decent sized program or whatever task I'm giving to it, end to end with handovers, handing back to previous agents, all of that. So that's incredible to see. So it definitely feels like it's headed in the right direction.
Questions, have we go line by line?
There was a question here, sorry.
Yeah. First of all, just like genuine appreciation for sharing all of this. The hacker in me loves that you're flexible to everything, you're experimenting with everything. Just thanks for sharing. First sort of concrete question, when you were saying that how you're helping Citi prepare for GenAI, you mentioned how you're structuring your documentation differently now to be it more indexable for agents. Could you comment on that? Like, what does that concretely mean?
Yes, I'm always worried about leaking any kind of proprietary information, but generally speaking, so we've got, in fact, my group has a lot of tech writing focus. I like to have very good documentation for engineers and just generally clear documentation. So, for example, at times in documentation, you'll see there's repetition. There are certain common aspects that get repeated. And I'll take some examples, not really specific to Citi, but let's say the CI/CD section may need to be done the same way, but it could be very repeated across, let's say, 4 to 5 products or n number of products. Now, the way we structure documents, the way that works better with GenAI would be when you've got these almost snippets, central sections that can be referenced from various documents or product pages. So what that leads to is when you're trying to have any form of RAG on your site or your documents, there's lesser repetition, which means that when the LLM is then producing final answers to a certain question that you've asked, again, there's lesser repetition or cleanup that needs to happen or pre or post-processing that needs to happen. So that's what I mean by restructuring documentation. One. Second, using a lot more metadata, because our documentation has good metadata, but I think we could have done it better, which is what we are doing now. More tags, more metadata, more information on recency or next review date, etc. Anything that can aid the model to pull out the right subset is what we are trying to focus on, and this has helped. Again, the way images are structured in documentation as well, to be able to index that better, which means one, you've got to parse multimodal content, but then also have a description that is handy to enrich the messaging around it is sometimes good. So we're trying to think of those things and make our documentation better.
Thank you. Second, last question, promise. But so, sorry. But are you able to comment on at the current stage, is your evaluation pipeline more qualitative or more quantitative, and how would you expect that changes as you welcome multimodal models?
That's a very good question. I really aspire for it to become more qualitative, which is definitely difficult. We're moving towards that, so it's more quantitative at this point in time.
So I had this question. So from an operating model perspective, like people, process, and technology, what are the top one challenge or top two challenges so far in this journey you feel, like from people, from process, and technology?
You're going to get me in trouble, aren't you? Like, it's asking me so many. What would you think? Technology is perhaps something that I think all of us love as engineers, right? And that's something you can tame one way or another. It's going to be the other two for the most part. Yeah.
So you see people as the most toughest thing there, or in this journey?
Well, I mean, you got to take people on a journey, and that takes time and energy. And perhaps as engineers, you want to invest more energy doing things, developing things, and going at pace. So yes, I would thinking of it that way, that is more difficult.
Okay, I'll stop my question. I'll have one-on-one with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's lady.
Just sorry, you did a great job, by the way. Like amazing, and investing on data preparation. I think that's the best thing you can do, because that's where most companies.
Can you please
struggle.
talk in the mic?
Yeah, sorry. But my question was like, so you're developing mostly in house. So you're not using something like AWS. A lot of financial banks and all, they use AWS Bedrock or Sage. So you're not using something like that.
So not AWS Bedrock. We use the Vertex suite. So Google we use, yeah. So and that's a service. So basically the Vertex service, which is managed for us. So just no data residency, which means we do not use any data products. We don't even use context caching, but request response we do use. We do not use GCS to be able to store our documents in cloud storage, just again for that same reason. But we do use Google. We do use OpenAI via Azure at this point in time. Yeah. Model hosting is done on Azure for OpenAI models, and Google, of course, it's a managed service. Yeah. Yeah, it's a complex answer to that. So we definitely see productivity gains, and we do think it's going to continue to trend in the right direction. As a bank, there's so many opportunities that that you have to be able to automate processes it's very human dependent at times, and we can bring automation a different way of working, especially for processes that add value, but can add value in a different way. I just automating them away. So we see a lot of value can be created there. At the moment, if you talk about ROI in terms of typical ROI, we are very aware of the fact that this is the point in the journey where we've got to invest. Anything that you've got to get a return from sometimes needs time, patience, and investment. So that is where we are. Having said that, we are very aware that we should be starting to track how much are we investing, what are we expecting, and how do we make that happen. So that awareness is very much there. But what does that translate to? Definitely, I want to put this on record, does not mean we'll have fewer people. That's not the only way we are looking at it. It's more about making more things happen, doing things a better way, and figuring that out. So hence I say it's complex, but early on the journey.
We don't have the third speaker, so we have some extra time for questions. So, and also we have, like, in the end, a bit more time for discussions.
So the prompting, the productivity gains you say, right? So this is my point of view. What I like from a short, non-complex work, I really agree that. But I also felt like, one of the test cases, what I found is like for a complex task, it makes more time.
It takes more time, yeah. Yes, we would see the same, but actually I think strategically and principally the way we look at it is we do not want to automate away our complex tasks that perhaps are the most valuable tasks also. So there's almost this matrix. If it's an important task and if it's complex, that's not something that we want to delegate away to GenAI. Because that's not where we see value, because they could be really critical. What's the point of delegating away the most critical thing for yourself? You don't do that generally. I would say the same of code. I don't want GenAI to write all my code because that's the most fun part of doing things. But that's what. So we're not trying to attack the most complex tasks. And I can give you another parallel, not related to GenAI, but relevant to a bank. If you think about embracing public cloud, other companies may have done it 10, 15 years ago, right? Banks have not done it a decade ago. But if a bank starts from trying to migrate its most complex platform into cloud, that would not set them up for success. And I almost apply that to GenAI. Hence, we do not. So in that set of the thematic use cases that I was talking about, that set was not in it, most complex tasks, because we would just set it up for failure. That's how I look at it. Yeah. 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 Yes. Sure.
Yeah, so my question is just reflecting back to gentleman's question regarding to people that you have. You mentioned that it has been introduced to many teams across different departments. What was the acceptance across different teams? So what was
extremely high. So GenAI is not something that you need to position. Teams want to have more and more of it and want to participate, do more and more of it. So you don't have to market it to them. They want to do it and they want to learn and they want to almost use it in their day-to-day processes. So the acceptance was really 100%. We've got such a backlog of requests, interests, use cases that are registered for that reason, because people see value in it and want to go on that journey.
Thank you. My second question is, how did you pilot, selecting subset of people from different organization or just filtering?
It's a good question. So collectively, all of us were new to that journey, but some parts of the organization are central and have to make sure that the architectures, the designs, the platforms are right. We happen to be part of that, which means the way we piloted was one, selecting that subset, the thematic set of use cases, making sure as a task force, we are close to ensuring that the designs, the approach is right. And it's not too difficult because we're talking about a dozen or a small set. You can do it. You can make sure that the themes are coming together, the blueprints are coming together, the right things are happening, and then it's rinse and repeat. So that's how we went about it, making sure that it is getting reviewed. There's a guided process and journey for these use cases.
One last question.
That's a part of our investment, that phase of the journey. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I also work for a big bank. At a guess, how many people do you think more people are using your tools officially versus the number of people who are using commercial tools on the side? Do you think, like, what's your feeling on? Because I understand your tools are very, very restrictive about what people can do with them. But my experience would be a lot of people are probably unofficially going outside of that and using other GenAI tools. Do you have any feeling of how that works in Citi?
Look, at Citi, that path is very difficult.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to use another tool. Let's say open up a chat GPT interface and ask a question. Those pathways will be blocked for you, or you would not be able to interact with, let's say, Olama and spin something up. So effectively, you've got to make sure for everybody to have a good experience. You make the tools that you're rolling out, they are their very best. So that is how we are looking at it. I happen to come from an engineering background, so I'm very invested in making that happen because we are also consumers of the same technology. So yeah, that's how we're looking at it. Thank you. Well
Excellent
done.
talk.
Oh, of course.
We have a short 3-minute break, and then Mykola will be presenting about LLM in code generation. The pin on your shirt. Let's see a bit closer. Quite sure. Okay.
Really interesting. And my company was 7 years, like, asked me if I can just like ask them about like, do you have some idea like what the market is doing for like creative testing AI? Did you have any background in? Are you working now?
I like
Yeah. My brain just shut down.
You asked too many things. I heard the market.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Could you make a photo for me presenting?
I don't have the QR code, so just I can.
Yeah, of course. So if I can ask a question, that would be amazing. Yes. Thank you so much for organising the event.
Oh.
It's a long day. I don't think I'll make it.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. The credit goes to everyone.
Yeah. I have been in the last week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, streaming started, yes. Streaming started. And voice does sound already turn it on, or I should unmute?
Yeah, I hear your sound. It's already recorded. So I'll just get everyone together.
Yeah, sure.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is that if you're not on LinkedIn, like how do people reach out?
Sorry. Sorry, I forgot to ask about timing. How much time I have? 20?
Around 30 minutes.
Okay, we'll be fine.
So let's say you talk 25 minutes and 5 minutes for questions.
Yes, good.
Yes, so the talk. Please quiet down. Thank you.
Cool.
Yes, Mykola.
Hi, today I would like to talk to you about code generation and practical code generation. Does it really works or does it fails? We will try. In case anything will fail, I have copied file so you can see how it works. So what we can do practical session for code generation. And about myself, super short. I'm lead backend engineer at Auditorium. It's a small educational startup. I have more than 15 years of software engineering experience, had a lot of bunch of technologies worked with, from front-end, back-end, system administration, a lot of. So now I am focusing fully with LLMs. What we will use? We will use approach which I can recommend you to use for your daily development, for simple features or more complex if you have enough money to put everything into context. Self-hosted Gradio version. Gradio chat is very interesting thing which helps you to use just one small file and have a nice API. This is API which you can use. So I created a special system prompt. Don't worry, you can find later it in repository. It's very long one. So basically it's chain of thoughts and a lot of things added into it to be like super nice, super good. You know, this kind of languages, this kind of technologies. Be careful when you do it and blah, 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 blah. I spent like several days to craft it. So, or a bit less. Actually, I don't remember. So a bit shorter. So you set up how it will react. Actually, system prompts, it's very important because if you use just ordinary your helper, your grateful agent, you will get some different results on different level. Next one, I would like to show you a small demo, how to build the calculator. The prompt which I would like to do is create calculator and make it work. Dramatic pause. Yeah, something we have. Let's review it. So understood. I will assist you on focusing on doing these things and create. So we have several steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this session is very nice. I can show you previous session, which was much better in review. So we have output which tells that we can create calculator, and what we need to do for this, run the application, create React Next application, create several files, copy them, then update page, main page to it, and then add some basic styling. Then you just import files and everything works. Cool. Let's see if it really works. This is our application which we have. The problem was that I created it with a
standard, super standard review, and it has, as you can see, let's go back to slides. So step 1, set up project, create calculation component, update main page, add basic styling, import CSS file. Set up project. It works with Nest.js, just an empty project. It will work always. Then I added calculator.js file, which you can see here is added here. But the problem, our repository does not have page index.js because I used TypeScript when I created React application, and this is a problem. The problem is that we don't have it. We don't have page this file. What we can do? We can ask, I use TypeScript. Please, and where is no file index.js? And here's my current prompt. Okay, how we can pass here the whole project which we have? Can you tell me? How we can pass the whole project which we currently have into our repository, into prompt? We can like make what we do. Copy file, paste it here, and all files. This is actually really long. I prefer better and much more interesting way. We can use terminal.
So can you make the screen larger, because we don't really see much, or if you just let this say in Word?
Yes, so I created special helper library, which helps you to compact all your projects into one file. So all content of your project. Let's see it. So it basically, what does it do? It's compose every file which you have into a, it provides directory structure. So our library, our LLM client can use it. It gives you files which you have here and their content one by one.
Does it matter on the order in which it outputs?
Sorry?
Does the ordering matter?
Yes, I try it matter, and it always stable. For my library which I created, it's stable. So I spent several weeks to improving it slowly. But by the way, yes.
So you're gonna copy this into the UI of this file?
Yes.
Okay, so as a dev, you know, the terminal is always open. I would prefer CLI version rather than the UI. And then I would do just, you know, just gradual dot and it would load in the current directory. I would prefer such an UI.
Yes, you can do this. The problem is when you interact with LLM for coding, you read a lot, you copy something, and you copy your output into the. You don't know exactly what the prompt which you craft. You want to craft it as fast as possible. And here is my project. So I just craft it, and I see. I forgot one thing to add here. Here's my current project. Yeah, I use TypeScript. Here's my current project. So we will ask LLM to improve the output.
Okay, I think I work on, I don't believe I will be able to control copy. I believe at some point it would crash.
LLM?
It would crash like, you know, like copy paste the clipboard memory.
The context window as well.
Yes, context window is huge, but you don't need to pass everything. You need to pass part of your project. You need to pass controllers folder or folder for your migrations, database migrations, if you do it. This is like a second stage of what need to be done, because when you have a huge project for million lines, you cannot copy everything. You have to cut, you have to just take output for your representation of your architecture, like main files. This you can do as initial part for project, like microcontrollers, usual methods, API, and others. But this is like more different talk. My talk is very simple.
Is that what your bespoke code is doing? It's extracting the structure of your repo into the UI. Is that doing it for you?
No, it's copy paste, because I did a lot of things, and I created pipeline which have a loop. When you do changes, you pass it into LLM. LLM provides you output with in JSON, in files. You can update them, but every time you get a response from LLM, you have to verify it and see. Like every time you get something from LLM, you have to do a PR review. Actually, this is what you get. And for PR review, it's better to do it in UI. Like I use GitHub UI, very good, and IntelliJ IDEA UI for reviewing, the two best visual tools. So the very good thing which Gradio provides you, it's also have copy-paste actions. So you can copy files. I don't know what happens here, but not everything works as expected. So we see that it tells that the long output, it breaks it. Okay, so from previous sessions, the output. So thank you for providing current structure of your project and files. I see you using TypeScript, and we need to make some updates into calculator component. So it gives you a nice output for calculator and updates to main page. So page txt, we don't have index file. Let's check out here. So we have pushed updates to page txt, which was provided by LM, and layout txt, which allowed us to import file styles and React components. So the good part of this, you can use library if you want. You can download it. It's open for everyone. One important thing when you compose your prompt, when you compose your directory, if you do, for example, just archiving it as with star and put it as a single file, you will put everything, include system folder like Snot models, .NETs. You don't want this. You want to cut out as much as possible. I did a simple filtering for folders. It's you can adjust it to your needs, and current setups are usually fine. And also another important things when you work with your repository, you sometimes have .environment files with passwords. You don't want at any condition them to leak into the LLM's API, as far it's your own API. So one additional feature is password filtering. So it scans all input. If it finds password, it replaces it with replaced passwords 1, 2, 3. So now we got the response where LM tells, yes, we can fix it, change these files. But when I run it, we get a problem. Let's try. What? You work? No way.
An idea, why don't you look at what's in gitignore directly and just filter out those? So if you look at gitignore, it'll have like all your password files and other files that you don't want the LLM to know about. So that could be an automatic way to just filter out things.
Yes, I created special file passwords for you. Add all your passwords which you want to filter out, because passwords can be super random. You cannot detect it from.
Repositories already have like a gitignore. People normally.
Yes, you have gitignore, but this library doesn't use gitignore. It uses.
Do you do any re-ranking? So when you're selecting the text set, you could re-rank the output, right? So you could re-rank it in the form depending on the question that you're asking. You could say, hey, LLM, give me the best snippets to use for the text.
Yes, when you do next, you can. So there was an issue with code. Let's check out that version. No, it's fixed. Please break. It's not a real demo if it doesn't breaks.
Just to ask, so what you're trying to run now is the code that you built by using the AI?
Yes, only that code. Oh.
And just to recap, so what you said is that you use the AI to build the code, but then you put it in your editor, you review it manually, and you compile it.
Yes. Okay, let's go to latest version because it's calculator. I can simulate that error. Fresh. Oh no. There was error when I building the code, and the error was that calculator txt has was built for server components, but it was trying to do it on front. And you have okay, you use state is not allowed for server side components, and you have to fix it. I did this small fix and other fixes, and
is that the stochastic nature of the LLM though?
Sorry?
And how many times have you tried running that? It could be just random that it got it right that time.
You can get. The question is of your how good your prompts are, and like you get mostly stable results. So this is reality. No. Okay, this is calculator CSS not found. Okay, let's check out the latest version. I don't know.
That Claude under the hood.
Yes, it's connected to the cloud.
No, Claude. Which LLM?
Cloud Sonnet 3.5. I think it's broken. Yes, so okay, it's broken, but let's do one thing which will save my demo. No. Yes.
And does the LLM sees the Git files, or it only sees the input?
No, LLM see only what you put into the LLM, into prompt.
Yes.
Yes, so it's built the calculator. The code is in repository. And as you can see, it works. We want to test it maybe? Let's make it honor. We don't have square root. Prompt was not so. Divide by zero was proposed as improvals.
Oh my God.
Sorry, 1,000 plus 2,002, 3,002. Divide by 7. I never tried divide. Okay. But what we can see here, button layout is kind of strange. Design requires improvements, and we have 0 test here. So actually, I don't know if it works. Yes. So I tested. It looks like it works. We can divide by 0. Yeah, it's infinity. Cool. It didn't break.
You hard-coded that. Divide by 0, print infinity.
Let's see if I really hard-coded it. We can open the directory. Cloud calc free here. Components. I don't see any hard code here. It just clear divide. So what you can have? I pushed this thing into the repository. Calculator example. You can download it. You can see whole prompt log for the prompt session, cloud session, and to see everything which was included. Also, cloud chat interface. You can get it here, run it locally. Just don't forget to set up environment variable Anthropic API key. Prompt library. The prompts which I crafted. Web prompt, system developer prompt, when you want to do some debug. Web coding stellar prompt, the good one, like a lot of iterations. Also dump of current project which was done here. So you can get this. Cost was just, yeah, I will do it. Oh, don't worry. Cost was just 10 cents because it was very short. And actually I got like from the first attempt the nice result for calculator. There was just several issues. One major issue I created a TypeScript repo, but it was but Cloud initially proposed to me to use JavaScript files, which didn't work.
Sorry.
Before we come to the question, I want to mention
could you just try one more thing? Like, could you try square root of -1?
Sorry?
Square root of -1.
We don't have square roots.
Oh, you don't have square roots?
We can 2 plus 2 divided 2. We why 2 plus 2? No. This calculator executes on every operation, so you don't have the.
Or it doesn't do associative.
Yes, it's super simple. Yeah, one important thing. Cloud has very huge difference between with ChatGPT and OpenAI. OpenAI has a cutoff for half year now, and actually it feels longer. So every new API which comes out, you don't have this knowledge inside ChatGPT. So you can get outdated code being generated. With Claude, you have code which is up to date. For the reasoning things, like if you have something complex problem, you tell us, oh, this is my Ansible config, it doesn't work, tell me why. Both do nice. Cloud sometimes provide better result, but you get a cutoff for usage, very low limit for daily usage. In ChatGPT, I super rarely face daily limit. So this is like important. Questions?
What was difficult in building the prompt for you for getting Claude to get you the right answers?
The difficulties first. When I started to use LLMs, I used just ChatGPT. Then I used OpenAI API for basically API to ChatGPT. And composing prompts, I built a lot of files, which were fetching files, crafting them into one, and sending, and then getting it back. As I mentioned, every time you need to make a review. Otherwise, you get into loop, you spend all your money, you spend $5, $10, $20, $100 on the loop, and you don't get the results. And if you get something which broken in console, it's usually for you easier to cut that part, because you can get like output for thousands lines, 100,000 lines of code broken if something in the loop. You need just to pass part of it. Second important part with Claude, when you have the session, every time you send, all your chat history is being sent as it. So every new message adds to previous message. So your log context windows runs can be exhausted first, and you spend much more money. So start new session when you do it, especially via using like API. When you have high limit, if you use chat window, you are not that bad in that situation, but you will exhaust your daily limit for usage. Other part was like, as I mentioned, passwords. I was it was pretty boring for me to cut out passwords for things which were being stored, and you don't want to lose it anyway, so you spend this time. And automating just this simple part of copying everything into one single dump, it really helps.
So the passwords are cut out by an LLM, or is it like just a script that is?
It's a script. I can show you the library. The prompt library, you have here password example. So you create list of your passwords which you have in your directory. Really catch them all, and after you set them, you set command PC is content dump content without password filtering. PCS is dump content with password filtering. Sanitized output, I always use sanitized output, and then you get your response. We can actually see how it's been used. Oh, not cut, sorry, Vim. Okay, super simple. Directory listing, file content, what you have, and the libraries. And you can use it to just tell me, oh, let's improve this or that. For our calculator example, we want nice order of buttons.
The current project,
Sorry?
TXT describes your project.
TXT, I made it to make it readable because you can have folders, you can have different type of files. If you don't know, if you don't have extension, it's hard for your mind to see, is it folder or is it just text file? Because basically it's a text file, it's a dump.
Yes. And Are there any other questions, by the way?
Do you do anything to check for security vulnerabilities in the code that it returns?
PR review. Oh, never ever trust. It have super high confidence on providing you output. Output could have absolutely different. You can get results like, oh, I cannot access to port, cores are bad, I cannot set it up. It will tell you how to disable cores. It will disable, it will work. Or I cannot access to database, IP addresses. It will tell you, okay, let's open database access, and it will open it for all IP addresses. So, but you can ask, does this code has vulnerabilities? And this is current project at square root, but operation. Let's try.
So the instruction on the bottom was just for the LLM to add square root operation on this slide.
I don't know. Usually request takes like 20 to 30 seconds. When I was running something locally, it was able to run like 60 seconds. Okay. Export square root. Let's see. We have, so this time I have very bad luck with formatting, but yes, it tells me, let's implement this change, square root calculations, and looks like it's not full output. No. Expected comma. I missed something in the. Yeah, it's finally failing.
Very trivial things.
Not like trivial output doesn't work this session, unfortunately. Let's see. No. Let's try to find the.
By the way, anyone has one more question until it's being debugged? Let's see if the square root will go.
Yeah, export default calculator.
So what this is actually the application in use, and it seems there is still a lot of debugging in the process.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of debugging, and
where do you think you would improve this as the next step?
the last is to build it fully automated, but you need you need to be able to run it. Yes, I use it constantly. Sorry, no, sorry, which one, GitHub?
Copilot behind it. It has a workspace. It's not sure why you go to simple things. Yeah, that one is still in beta, but I've tried briefly and it works really well.
I can tell you that GitHub, which you have in the as enterprise version, is actually so no, square root cannot be added. It's failed. So GitHub and Copilot Enterprise version been fine-tuned on your code base. And actually, I got a very nice feeling when it was enabled, because before it was like starting and providing like very bad result, not usable at all. And like in 3 months, I got like immediate feeling that code become exceptionally useful for what you really want to get, because it started to really show the normal code, provide nice auto completion, which were in line of our code base. And when you use it as a private hub version, as private account and account, it's different things. It's really better. Yeah, it's better because it's fine-tuned on your code base. But generally, it's good in generating tests, good in super small fixes, good as long tab when you auto-complete it, but it's bad when you try to ask him to do something complex. It cannot do it.
Yeah, that's the workspace.
Oh, maybe I have not used it. Cannot tell. Okay. Any other questions?
Have you tried Devin or OpenDevin and Devica?
I tried previous things like GPT Engineer. They stuck in the loop if you ask to do something more complex. So basically, I use this part as to develop something to get the initial impression how something new should be built. If you don't know this, you read documentation for every feature you use, and then you can understand if it's okay or not. Only this moment you get results. For UI, it's fine. For backend, it's also fine, but you have to know which libraries you use, because they can have, usually you have very complex library hidden under very simple interface, which you have to understand. Good.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's very difficult to do.